The house was unusually quiet that day, the kind of quiet that makes you notice the faint hum of appliances or the distant chirping of birds outside the window. I sat alone in the living room, flipping absent-mindedly through a magazine I had no intention of reading. My husband, always preoccupied with work, was out of town again. I wasn't angry, this had become normal, but the emptiness left behind felt sharper than usual. I glanced at my phone, hoping for a text or call, but there was nothing. The silence was a reminder of how predictable my life had become, how routine had wrapped itself around me like an invisible cage. I loved my husband, or at least I told myself I did, but something had shifted over the years. Passion had faded into comfort, and comfort had slowly turned into complacency. The sound of a car door slamming pulled me out of my thoughts. I peeked out the window to see my nephew Alex walking toward the house. He was my husband's younger brother's son, though he felt more like a distant cousin to me given our minimal age difference. Alex was in his early 20s, confident and carried a charisma that seemed to draw people in without effort. I opened the door before he could knock. "Hey Alex, what brings you here?" I asked, masking my surprise with a smile. He grinned. "Uncle told me to pick up some documents he left. Hope it's not a bad time." "Not at all, come in," I said, stepping aside as he walked in. I couldn't help but notice the ease with which he moved and the energy he brought into the room. He tossed his bag onto the couch and looked around. "Nice place as always, you've got good taste, Aun," I chuckled, brushing off the compliment. "Flattery won't get you out of trouble." "What documents are you looking for?" he shrugged. "Something about property papers." "I'll check his study." As Alex made his way to the study, I realized how different he was from my husband. Alex was spontaneous, charming, and unapologetically confident, qualities that had long been absent in my day-to-day life. I shook the thought away, feeling foolish. He was family. But then Alex returned with the papers, his sleeves rolled up revealing a tattoo on his forearm I hadn't noticed before. He saw me staring and smirked. "You like it?" "It's interesting," I replied, feeling a bit flustered. We sat and talked for a while, more than we ever had before. His stories were lively, filled with humor and adventure, a stark contrast to the monotony I had grown accustomed to. His laughter was contagious, his presence magnetic. For a brief moment, I forgot about everything, my husband, my responsibilities, the unspoken rules of propriety. In that moment, it was just Alex and me, two people sharing a connection I couldn't quite define two of two. The conversation flowed effortlessly, filling the space with a warmth I hadn't felt in years. Alex leaned back on the couch, his eyes holding mine just a moment too long as he spoke. There was something about the way he listened, the way he seemed genuinely interested in every word I said. It was disarming, almost intoxicating. At one point, he reached for the glass of water I had placed on the coffee table, and our hands accidentally brushed. The contact was brief, but it lingered in my mind. I pulled back instinctively, laughing it off, but I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks. Alex noticed. "Are you okay?" he asked, his tone casual but his eyes searching mine. "Of course," I said quickly, standing up to put some distance between us. "It's just warm in here, that's all." I walked to the kitchen, busying myself with nothing in particular. I could feel his presence even from across the room, a subtle tension building that neither of us addressed. When I turned back, he was standing in the doorway, leaning against the frame with that same easy confidence. "You seem different today," he said, his voice softer now. "Different how?" I asked, trying to sound indifferent. "I don't know, more alive." His words caught me off guard, and for a moment I didn't know how to respond. There was a sincerity in his tone that made it hard to dismiss as mere flattery. I felt seen in a way I hadn't in a long time, and it scared me. "Alex, you should probably go soon," I said finally, avoiding his gaze. "Why?" he asked, taking a step closer. "Am I making you uncomfortable?" "No, it's not that," I said quickly. Just," what he pressed, his eyes locking onto mine. I didn't have an answer, or maybe I did, but I couldn't bring myself to say it. The air between us felt charged, heavy with unspoken N-words and unacknowledged feelings. He was standing close now, too close, and I could feel my resolve slipping. This isn't right, I whispered more to myself than to him. I know, he said, his voice low and steady, but it doesn't feel wrong, does it? I looked up at him, my heart pounding in my chest. For a moment, the rest of the world faded away, it was just us, suspended in a moment that felt both impossible and inevitable. He reached out his hand, brushing against mine, and I didn't pull away. The room seemed to shrink around us, the distance between us disappearing as if it had never existed. My mind screamed at me to stop, to step back, to think of the consequences, but I didn't move. I couldn't just. As the tension reached its peak, the sound of the front door opening shattered the moment. My heart leaped into my throat as Alex and I sprang apart, both of us turning toward the sound. My nephew Ryan stood in the doorway, his expression a mix of awful confusion and suspicion. Hey, Ryan, he said slowly, his eyes darting between us. Am I interrupting something? No, of course not, I said, forcing a laugh that felt hollow even to me. Alex was just about to leave. Alex, to his credit, played it cool. Yeah, I was just grabbing some papers for Uncle. I didn't expect to run into you though, he said, addressing Ryan with a casual grin. Ryan raised an eyebrow, clearly not buying the nonchalance. Well, I guess it's good timing then. Uncle asked me to swing by and pick up the same papers. My stomach churned as I realized the excuse Alex had used to come here was now exposed. Ryan's presence was a stark reminder of the line I had nearly crossed, and the shame hit me like a tide. I think there's been a misunderstanding, I said quickly, desperate to regain control of the situation. Alex so already has the documents, you don't need to be here. Ryan didn't move, his eyes narrowing slightly. Funny, he didn't mention you'd be here. Alex, guess it slipped your mind. Alex shrugged, his easy demeanor still intact. I didn't think it mattered, Aunt and I were just catching up, nothing more. The words hung in the air, innocuous on the surface but loaded with subtext. Ryan seemed to sense it, his gaze lingering on me for a moment longer than was comfortable. Well, I'll let you two catch up, Ryan said finally, his tone clipped as he turned and walked back out the door, leaving it slightly ajar behind him. The silence that followed was deafening. Alex looked at me, his expression unreadable.